Always a good one, is it? So I usually don't take Mondays off anymore. I try to plan for a day later in the week, which seems to work out a little bit better for me. Mondays are usually days when I answer a lot of messages. But I do have kind of the same routine on Monday mornings every week, unless I have to be somewhere early. I like to sleep in a little bit, and then I like to linger with some good coffee. The CBS Morning News and the upcoming scripture text for this week. Uninterrupted, and that is bliss for me. It doesn't take much. This past Monday, as I was lingering in all of this, looking at our text for this week, with its accusation of Jesus as king, all of a sudden, CBS This Morning breaks in with this. The New York Times crossword puzzle today has a 5-letter word for king of the CBS This Morning News. The answer being Gail King, the anchor of CBS This Morning. And I'm thinking how timely as we talk about earthly kingdoms and heavenly ones, and who is our king, and the worldly perceptions of truth and light. Last week we left off with Peter and that stupid rooster crowing. That was the ending of our text. He had denied Jesus 3 times, just as Jesus said that he would do. Both Peter and Jesus are being interrogated, we remember. Peter is outside, and Jesus is inside in the home of Annas, a religious leader. And it is a very unethical interrogation that's going on. Our scene now shifts from Peter to the courtroom as such, with Jesus standing before the Roman governor, Pontius Pilate. This trial before Pilate is laid out in 7 scenes, a 7-scene drama of sorts, and today we're going to get scenes 1 through 3. Scene 1, the Jews. Religious authorities. John always refers to the religious authorities as the Jews. I was reading some commentary, as several suggested, inserting a more political correct title here for the Jews. And I'm like, really? This is not anti-Semitic. Our author John is also Jewish, and so is Jesus. And so let it stand as the Jews. Let's call them like we see them. Scene 1 is all about the Jews and Pilate, the Roman governor of Judea. And Jerusalem is part of that jurisdiction. This is church and state. The Jews could stone Jesus for blasphemy. They could do that. But the Roman government had the authority to execute. Crucifixion, the death penalty. Pontius Pilate. This is the same Pontius Pilate that we say in our Apostles' Creed, suffered under Pontius Pilate. Because the deal is, Pilate didn't really want to crucify Jesus. For Pilate, he wanted to beat Jesus up, show him, and then set him loose. But there was this ping-pong match between church and state, you see, and ultimately, Jesus is going to die. And the way the story opens just really has me drawn in. Here's what it says. Then the Jews led Jesus from Caiaphas to the palace of the Roman governor. By now, it was early morning. First of all, note, it was the church guys leading Jesus to the Roman governor. And then note the time of day, early morning. We're not going to see this wording again until Easter morning, resurrection morning. The sun is just now coming up on this day. But by sundown, both the Passover and Sabbath is going to be beginning, which creates the next issue. The Jews led Jesus to Governor Pilate's palace and handed him over. That's how it's worded. They handed Jesus over outside. They basically say, well, here he is, and now we'll just wait out here. We're just going to wait out here. Because you see, if they stepped into this Gentile's house, Governor Pilate's palace, they would be ceremonially unclean, and they would not get to celebrate the Passover. No lamb chops for them. They couldn't celebrate the Passover. And so what are we going to see with the Jews waiting outside? Well, Pilate is going to be popping in and out of his headquarters. He's the one doing the moving here. And I can just see Pilate rolling his eyes. What's the big deal? Pilate really wasn't thrilled about being in Jerusalem. He wasn't thrilled about being there. He didn't live there. That wasn't his home. He lived along the coastal region of Caesarea by the water. And so if you had a fancy lake home where the sun is shining and it was smooth sailing most of the time, remember there he's surrounded by Romans. Would you want to be in Jerusalem? Not so much. But Pilate got wind of all of this unsettledness over in Jerusalem just before this Passover celebration, of this King of the Jews business here. And Pilate didn't want an uproar. And so he figured, well, I better go to Jerusalem and see what's going on and take care of things. Pilate is in town to keep the peace of Rome. That's called the Pax Romana. I love that word. Pax Romana, peace of Rome. And sure enough, here comes the church guys, the religious leaders with Jesus in hand, demanding that Pilate take care of things. Demanding that Pilate execute Jesus, because Jesus claims to be the Messiah, the King of the Jews, which is their title. Not Jesus's. He doesn't say that. And the religious leaders aren't dumb. They figure if they can persuade Pilate that Jesus is a threat to him as a king, as an earthly king, Pilate will take care of it, and they will have Jesus dead. Bada bing, bada boom, back to normal. Jesus is out of the picture. So where's the irony here? Well, Passover begins at sundown. What is Passover? It is the Jewish festival that celebrates God delivering the Jews from a pagan foreign power. And now the Jews are asking this same pagan foreign power to do what they cannot, to kill Jesus. Scene 2 brings us to Pilate's interrogation of Jesus. For Pilate, Jesus' kingship is political, and it's possibly an act of treason against Rome. But for our author John, this is John the Apostle now, Jesus' kingship is a theological nature that totally redefines the world's understanding of what power and authority look like. Jesus' power comes from where? God. Comes from God alone, not from military muscle. Jesus' power is his testimony to the truth. And who is truth? God the Father, embodied through Jesus the Son. And so Pilate summons Jesus in and he asks him, "Are you the King of the Jews?" To which Jesus responds, "Is this your idea? Or did you talk to the others about me?" Pilate says, "Who am I? I'm not a Jew. I'm not a Jew. It was your people who handed you over to me, so what have you done?" Jesus replies, "My kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jews. My kingdom is from another place." "Ah," Pilate says, "so you're a king then. You are a king." Jesus replies, "You are right in saying that I am a king, because that's why I was born. That is why I came into the world, to testify to the truth." And then we get the famous line, what is truth, right? What is truth? Keep in mind that Pilate comes from a world in which philosophers sat around debating and asking questions with questions about questions, pretty much. But Jesus, who was born to testify to the truth, the question isn't so much what is truth, but rather, who is truth? Who is truth? And it is the same question that we continually need to answer, especially as the world beckons us in. All kinds of outside voices, right? Our cell phone rings, and the apps on our phone are constantly dinging. I finally had to shut off some of my notifications because they were just driving me crazy. Which voice do we listen to? Who is truth? Jesus says, I am. I am the way, the truth, and the life. And he tells the Samaritan woman, I am he. And he tells the blind man, the man born blind, you are looking at him, friend, with those new eyes of yours. Jesus is testifying to the truth. God the Father. Pilate, he's the most powerful dude in the area. He makes the rules. He has the military might, the taxation. It all belongs to him. He can do what he wants to. The death penalty, all is within his power, this earthly kingdom. How about Jesus? What's his power? His power is love. It's love. His kingdom is not of this world. As we sing our closing song, a story to tell to the nations, and Christ's great kingdom will come on earth, a kingdom of love and life. Love. We get to the final scene for today, scene 3, Barabbas, the bandit. And so Pilate is really just not wanting to deal with all of this. And so he finds no basis to condemn Jesus. And so he offers the Jews a choice. It's custom on Passover to release one prisoner. And so he goes out to the Jews again, to the crowd, and he says, okay, here's your choice. Who do you choose? Do you choose Jesus or Barabbas, who is a bandit? Give us Barabbas. Give us Barabbas. So back in John 10 on Ash Wednesday, if you were here, Pastor Rasmussen preached on the Good Shepherd. We see the word bandit, at least in most of the translations. What I read today wasn't bandit, but most of them are. I like that translation. Bandit. Who comes in and steals? A bandit, a thief. Versus the good shepherd who protects. What is truth? How does our culture define truth? This makes me chuckle a little bit. How about you? We live in a time when we aren't sure who or what to believe. Would you agree with that? Probably. Yeah. At least from a cultural standpoint. A culture where we can pick the very news channel we want to watch based on our view of truth. Or the one station that views the world how we view it. Depending on how you view it. I came across this article yesterday, and I posted it on my Facebook page. I know some of you don't have Facebook, and so I said I would reference it. It is from an article in the Washington Post. In 2013, someone had hacked into the Associated Press Twitter account, and claimed that there had been an explosion at the White House and that President Obama had been severely injured. Of course it was fake news. There was no explosion and the president was not injured. But because of this fast-paced spread of news, that's the world we live in, it's instant, the Dow Jones dropped 100 points in just 2 minutes' time. That was the result. Once the news was cleared up, but the Dow did regain, but wowza. Another interesting find in the study of this fake news versus truth found that by all metrics, fake news outpaced truthful, factual news. The fake news attained a broader audience. Fake news attained a broader audience. Why? Well, because falsehoods contain more novelty than truth does. It's juicier. It's juicier. And juicy sells. People will retweet or repost falsehoods, fake news, more frequently because it contains new, even if it's wrong information. Another interesting find, it wasn't automated robots doing the retweeting and reposting. It was real, live, flesh and blood people spreading fake news. It was human activity. Jesus says to Pilate, everyone on this side of truth listens to me. Friends, what truth is so central in your life that you are unwilling to compromise it? Or what truth do you absolutely, positively, without a doubt, know to be true? What is that truth that you absolutely, positively know to be true? And what side of truth are you on? Cultural side or kingdom side? Earthly or heavenly? We can experience Christ's kingdom now and not quite yet at the same time, depending on what side of truth we abide in, what side of truth we remain in. Even Pilate sees the injustice of this situation with Jesus. And don't think Pilate's all soft, because he was very vindictive and ruthless. That's the kind of ruler he was. But even he sees the injustice in this situation. I find nothing that this man did. I find no fault with him. You guys deal with it, is basically what he's telling the Jews. And so, what does he do? He passes the buck. He lets culture decide. And what do they decide? Give us Barabbas. And so here we have a choice. We have a choice. And the crowd chooses the company of a bandit because the culture around them says so.